Don't. Please, Darius. I didn't mean to. Please forgive me. The man stumbled backward, mud splashing beneath his boots as he gasped for air. His trembling hands clutched at the night, desperate for mercy. But mercy was something Darius Hale had never learned. Behind him, the city lights of New York flickered like dying stars, cold, distant, uncaring. The air smelled of rain and gunpowder. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed, slicing through the silence. Darius stepped forward, his shadow falling over the man like the weight of judgment itself. "Darius!" The man sobbed again, falling to his knees. "I swear it was a mistake. Just once, just this once, spare me." A twisted smile curved across Darius's lips. "Darius Hale doesn't forgive," he said coldly, pressing the barrel of his gun against the man's chin. "Punishment isn't my duty. It's my pleasure." The man's tears mixed with the rain as he begged once more. For a moment, Darius lowered the gun and hope flickered in the man's eyes. Then Darius whispered, "Fine. I'll kill you your way." He drew a knife from his belt, its blade glinting under the dim streetlight. "Tell me," he murmured, voice venomous, "who do you pray to now?" The man's sobs turned into choking screams. Darius's patience shattered. With one swift move, the blade slashed across the man's throat. Blood splattered the cracked pavement. Darius didn't flinch, he just watched the life fade from the man's eyes before walking away into the storm. Under the heavy noon sun, traffic hissed and brakes squealed across West Baker Street. The camera light glared against the dust as Nora Reed adjusted her mic and turned toward a weary shopkeeper. Nora said, "What has changed here over the years?" The old man wiped sweat from his brow and shook his head. "Everything. Thea now costs more than rent. We pay twice, once to the landlord and once to the men in black." Nora asked again, "You mean Darius Hale?" The man whispered, "No one says his name loud, miss. Once you do, the night knocks back." She crossed the street to a woman standing by a food cart. Nora asked, "Do people still feel safe around here?" The woman clutched her apron and laughed without humor. "Safe? Honey, I sleep with lights on. If we don't pay, someone disappears from the block." A young mechanic leaned from his garage doorway. "Last week my boss missed his payment. His car was found in the river next morning. You want proof? Look at the empty stalls." Nora turned to the camera, her voice steady. "When the law stays silent, someone has to speak until it listens." The crowd watched her with a mix of fear and hope, microphones humming, traffic blaring behind them. Later that afternoon in the newsroom of National Network News, the air was thick with chatter and ringing phones. Stan Meyer, head of crime coverage, leaned over her desk. Stan said, "You handled that crowd well, Nora, but big fish need louder bait. You want to make it in this city? Then be loud." "Invisible reporters never make headlines," Nora looked up from her half-written notes. "Guess I'd better start making some noise, then." She was the only daughter of Colonel Richard Reeder, soldier who never came home. Her mother, Margaret, a quiet housewife, kept 2 framed photographs on the kitchen table, one of the flag ceremony that ended their peace, and one of young Nora wearing a too large school blazer. From that small apartment on the north side of Los Angeles, Nora had climbed to the city's biggest newsroom, paying her way through college with part-time shifts and never once asking for a favor. That evening she stepped out again, camera crew in tow, the same streets now softer under orange light. She asked a bystander near the curb, "What do you think of this? Man, they say controls half the city." The man shrugged, biting his lip. "He owns the fear. We just rent it." Across town, in a dim bar, a television flickered showing that very interview. Darius Hale watched from his corner booth, smoke curling from his cigarette. He smiled once, then his eyes hardened. He murmured to the two men beside him, "Axel Vane, Rico Dre, remember this. Voices that rise against us, we cut them off at the tongue." Axel looked amused. Rico cracked his knuckles. Darius leaned back, still watching the screen while the crowd on television chanted for justice. Far away, Nora walked toward the sound of sirens, wondering how much louder her voice would have to become before the city finally listened. Smoke and dust hung over the avenue. Nora's crew had set up by the curb again. The afternoon light was turning bronze. Her microphone caught fragments of horns and angry voices, the whole stretch of Wilshire Boulevard frozen in a sudden jam. She stepped toward the nearest officer. Nora said, "What happened? Why has everything stopped?" The cop kept scanning the lane. 15 cars, all black. Whoever's inside gets the road to himself. "Step back, miss. No one crosses while that convoy rolls." Nora turned to the camera, breath fogging in the air. How powerful does a man have to be for a city to hold its breath? Engines rumbled. One window in the middle car drifted down. Behind the tint she glimpsed a face, Darius Hale, cigarette burning between his fingers, dark eyes unreadable. His gaze held hers for a heartbeat before the window slid up again. The cars moved on, sirens parting the crowd like a tide. For reasons she couldn't name, a shiver ran through her chest. Back in the bar across downtown, Axel Vane stood by the door, his earpiece buzzing. Rico Dre was wiping blood from his knuckles. The two of them had just handled a deal gone wrong. Rico growled, "That reporter again, boss. You sure you don't want me to shut her up for good?" Darius exhaled slowly, letting the smoke rise toward the neon ceiling. "No, let her talk. Every city needs a voice to fear before it falls silent." Axel smirked. "She's fearless, maybe that's what makes her dangerous." Darius crushed the cigarette in the ashtray. "Or maybe that's what'll break her." Next day, Nora stood on the same street, mic in hand, stopping strangers as traffic rushed behind her. Nora said, "Do you think anyone will ever stop Darius Hale?" A man replied, "Stop him? People don't even say his name. He owns the fear in this city." Nora turned to a woman carrying her child. "Do you believe justice still works here?" The woman answered, "Justice moved out when Hale moved in. We just try to survive." Nora faced the camera. "Then maybe it's time someone stops surviving and starts fighting back." Across town, Darius watched the broadcast on a muted bar screen. His jaw tightened as he muttered, "So the lady wants a war. Fine. Let's start by silencing her voice." Later that night, Cafe Ellis Street glowed like an amber lantern in the drizzle. Nora and Emily Hart sat by the window, steam swaying from their mugs. Emily said, "You looked like you'd seen a ghost when that convoy passed." Nora answered, "I saw him. Darius Hale. He looked back at me as if he already knew who I was." Emily forced a laugh, then stopped, giving him more reasons. "Do a weather piece or something." The bell over the door chimed. Silence rippled through the cafe. Every seat seemed to tighten as Darius entered with Axel and Rico behind him. Eyes fixed ahead, they crossed the floor like a storm walking on two legs. He stopped beside Nora's table. "So, Miss Reed, you finally saw me in daylight. Still look like a monster to you." Her pulse pounded, but she kept her chin high. "I don't report monsters, Mr. Hale. I report men who make people afraid to speak." He smiled, slow and sharp. "Then write this down: fear keeps the peace. Without it, this city tears itself apart." She leaned forward. "That's not peace. That's control. Rico shifted, hand brushing the gun under his jacket. Axel placed a calm palm on his shoulder to stop him. Emily whispered, "Nora, please." Darius lowered his voice, the words cutting like a whispered threat. "Control is the only truth left, reporter. You can either learn it, or lose your tongue trying to change it." Nora stood up, trembling but unbroken. "If that's a threat, you'll hear my voice again tomorrow." Darius looked at her for a long second, then laughed, quiet, genuine, unsettling. "Good. That's because you haven't really met me yet." He tossed a bill onto the counter and walked out into the rain, Axel and Rico following close behind. The door swung shut. The cafe exhaled. Emily whispered, "Nora, he didn't," Nora said, still watching the rain blur the streetlights. Her hands were shaking around the coffee cup. "And that's the problem." Outside, Darius's car waited at the curb. Axel asked, "Thought you were going to silence her." Darius stared through the windshield, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "I was. But then I realized every good story needs its heroine." The engine growled. The convoy pulled away into the mist, its taillights vanishing like embers into fog. Nora stood by the window, unaware that her own story had just begun. Morning sunlight spilled across the glass walls of National Network News. Nora Reed hurried through the security gate, the memory of last night's confrontation still burning at the edge of her mind. Her boss, Stan Meyer, stopped her before she reached the newsroom. Stan said, "You think ratings are worth dying for? That man warned you. Your life, this channel's reputation, all of it is on the line because of your mouth." Nora replied, "Sir, if we stop talking, he wins. Fear doesn't disappear when we whisper." Stan sighed, pressing his hands on the desk. "Sometimes silence keeps you alive. Step back before you're a headline yourself." She walked out without answering. Colleagues pretended to be busy. Even Emily Hart avoided eye contact. The office that once buzzed with chatter now felt like an echo chamber. At noon across the city, Rick and Axe drove down the coastal highway, a black muscle car slicing through traffic. Rick yawned behind the wheel. "Boss says keep it quiet for a week," he muttered. Axe smirked. "That word doesn't exist in your dictionary." A flash of movement crossed the roadbooks flying through the air. Rick slammed the brakes. A young woman dropped to one knee beside her scattered papers. Her backpack had burst open. Rick jumped out. "Hey, are you okay?" She looked up, startled but composed. "I'm fine. You nearly made me late for my interview." Axe leaned over the roof of the car. "Interview where?" "The new media company downtown," she said. Rick studied her with a crook smile. "Then we've got something in common. We ruin people's schedules too." She laughed nervously, dusting off her notes. "I'm Haley Brooks, and I still have 5 minutes left before I'm officially late." Rick said, "Good luck, Haley. The city's tough, don't let it chew you up." She nodded and hurried away, her ponytail swinging as she disappeared into the crowd. Rick watched her leave, a faint trace of curiosity softening his usual rough grin. Axe glanced at him. "Don't even start, man." Rick answered quietly, "Too late. She's already running in my head." A week later, Los Angeles buzzed with another kind of tension. Sirens echoed through downtown. Police lines stretched across the plaza in front of Federal Trust Bank. Inside, Darius Hale and a dozen men, all armed and precise, stood among terrified clerks and customers. The doors were locked, alarms disabled. Darius spoke calmly into the mic attached to his earpiece. "Everyone's phone's on the counter. No heroes today and you walk out breathing. No one moved at first. Then an old teller lifted her phone with shaking fingers. Darius smiled. Good. When obedience arrives, fear becomes unnecessary. Rick walked along the counter collecting the devices while Axel signaled two of the crew to seal the rear exits. The metallic clang of locks echoed like a heartbeat. Rick said, "Boss, all clear." They're scared out of their minds. Darius leaned close to him, voice low but sharp. Scare them just enough to remember. Too much and they stop listening. A man in a suit whispered something, trying to reassure his wife. Darius turned his head. "I hear whispers," he said softly. "Didn't I just take your voice?" The man dropped his eyes to the floor. Outside, Nora stood behind the barricade, microphone in hand, broadcasting live. This is happening right now in the heart of downtown. No confirmation yet on who's leading the siege, but witnesses describe the same shadow the whole city fears. Darius Hale. Her producer's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Keep talking. You'll live everywhere." She swallowed. Authorities haven't moved, and people are asking why. The question isn't where the police are, it's who they're waiting for. Her words drifted through every speaker in the bank. Darius raised his head toward the sound system. A smile flickered, a mixture of admiration and irritation. Darius murmured, "She never learns." Rick muttered, "One shot, boss, and she'll never talk again." Axe interrupted, calm but firm. "Too public, Rick. Crowds are our audience. Never kill the narrator." Darius chuckled, stepping toward the glass doors. He pressed the mic on his collar. "Attention out there," he said into the static, voice carrying like a sermon. Inside the bank, Darius looked toward the cameras mounted on the ceiling. 10 feet, he said slowly. "If any cop takes one step within 10 feet of this door, the floor runs red. Your chief knows the rules. No one steps within 10 feet of this door. I count distance better than your snipers count bullets." Outside, officers stiffened, rifles still. The commander on radio hesitated. Someone above him had said to wait. Cut to another building. Police Chief Daniels sitting in the dim office of Darius Hale's downtown base, hands bound by command more than rope. Sweat glistened at his temple. One of Darius's men placed a phone before him. A voice from the line Darius's poured out cold and controlled. "Chief, tell your brave boys to stay exactly where they are. 10 feet, remember. 10 feet between order and chaos." Daniels whispered, "You promised no violence." Darius replied, "And I keep my promises. But fear enforces them." Inside the bank, Rick tightened the duffel's zipper. Axe watched the hall's clock tick towards 2. Darius turned back to the hostages, his tone almost gentle. "You see, money isn't our prize, it's a message. The city forgets too quickly, so sometimes we remind it who keeps the peace. If the law refuses to act, someone must. Today that someone is me." A woman sobbed. A child clutched her sleeve. Darius's expression softened, just for an instant before he exhaled smoke from a half-burnt cigarette. "Calm down," he said quietly. "Every story needs witnesses." He looked at his crew. "Move out in 5. Darius's voice came through the line. "See, Chief, fear keeps your badge shining. Keep your men still." Chief Daniels whispered, "They'll start asking questions." Darius replied, "Then give them answers that sound like orders." Outside, Nora's broadcast carried over every major network. Her voice trembled but stayed clear. He warned them 10 feet. And still no one moves. The City of Angels has stopped breathing. Nora's voice trembled through the live feed. People are trapped inside, but no one is moving. It feels as if the entire city is holding its breath. The shot froze on her face, determined, frightened, luminous against the chaos. Inside the bank, Darius watched the same broadcast on the manager's monitor, a quiet smile playing at the corner of his mouth. He muttered to Rick, "She's still talking." Rick grinned. "Want me to make her stop?" Darius shook his head. "Not yet. The world only listens when she speaks." The camera light blinked red, sirens wailed, and the city waited for its next heartbeat. The screen filled with flashing red and blue against Darius's reflection in the glass, two worlds measuring each other's courage and waiting for one to blink. A faint click cut through the stillness. A burst of white light cracked across the marble. Darius did not flinch. Only his eyes moved. "Find it," he said, voice flat as steel. Rick moved first. Within seconds he caught the man crouched behind a counter, phone trembling in his hands. Rick yanked him out by the collar. The screen still showed Darius's half-shadowed face. "So you wanted a picture?" He slammed the phone to the floor, glass shattering. "Take a better one with your memory," Rick snarled, and his fist met the man's jaw. The sound echoed like a bell. Axel turned, eyes narrowing. "Boss, there's something else." He reached down and picked up a metallic badge from near the fallen phone. A police shield. Darius took it, turning it once in his fingers, the glint of blue light running across it. "So the law likes to watch its devil's work," he murmured. No one answered. He looked at the hostages, their breathing loud, uneven. "Whose badge?" Silence thickened. Axel stepped closer to the little girl clutching her mother's arm. He raised his weapon. "I'll count to 3, he said evenly. "If the owner of this doesn't step up, she stops breathing first. 1, 2, a voice cracked from the back, rough with fear. "It's mine. Please don't hurt her." Darius walked toward him, stopping so close the man's reflection trembled in his eyes. "So a hero," he whispered. "You bring a badge into my story. Does it make you brave? Or just stupid?" He lifted the badge, pressed it back into the man's shaking palm. "Keep it. Next time you come wearing honor, remember honor dies 10 feet from this door." Then, softer, to his crew. "No faces, no mistakes. Change the voices." As he spoke, the 3 men lowered their heads, sinking breaths, their tones shifting, each word sliding into a new accent. To anyone outside they would sound like strangers. Axel signaled. "Back exit clear. Time's over." "Move," Darius ordered. They swept through the service corridor and vanished into daylight. Red and blue lights spun wildly outside, but no one inside could describe a single face. Only the legend remained dot from across the plaza. Nora Reed's voice rang out through the chaos of her live report. "These terrorists still mock the law. These terrorists walk free again. When will the city of angels breathe without fear?" Darius paused beside the armored car. Her voice reached him, sharp and defiant over the sirens. Darius murmured to himself, "She'll never stop." Rick asked quietly, "You want me to shut that voice up?" Darius looked once toward the reporter, a trace of a half-smile under his breath. "No, Rick. Let her speak. The world remembers names it learns to fear." He turned away, stepping into the waiting car. The convoy pulled out, engines fading under the weighted silence of a city that still whispered one name. Darius Hale. Days turned into weeks, yet the echo of that name still gripped every corner of Los Angeles. News anchors repeated it with trembling voices. Children whispered it on their way to school. Fear had become a familiar language. At a small apartment north of the city, Nora Reed closed the door behind her and let out a long, tired breath. Her mother, Margaret, waited in the kitchen, teacups trembling slightly in her hands. Margaret said softly, "He's in every headline again. I wish the world would forget his name." Nora answered, "Names don't die, Mum. They just wait for the next scream to wake them." Her mother smiled faintly, trying to hide her worry. I met 2 new neighbors today. Nice boys. They helped me carry groceries and even took me to the doctor when my blood pressure went up. So polite, so kind. Neighbors? Nora frowned. We don't have any new houses on this street. Margaret shrugged. Maybe you were at work. One of them said he'll bring medicine tomorrow. Nora nodded absently, picking up her bag. Sure. Just don't trust smiles too quickly. The next morning, Nora rushed to leave for the studio. Her car, a modest blue sedan, refused to start. She hit the steering wheel in frustration. Really, not today. As she stepped out, a voice came from across the street. Need some help, ma'am? A tall young man stood there, European features, sharp blue eyes, a coffee brown jacket. He smiled disarmingly. I'm Derek, he said. Just moved here. I'm good with cars. Nora hesitated, but the charm in his voice broke her suspicion. Nora Reed, reporter. And yes, apparently my car hates me. A few minutes later, the engine coughed to life. She smiled. Thank you. You saved me from a lecture about punctuality. Derek wiped his hands on his sleeves. Where are you headed? The NNN studio. Downtown. He chuckled. That's a coincidence. I'm starting there 2. Transferred from a European network. Her eyebrows rose. Seriously? You're joining NNN? Looks like fate has a wicked sense of humor, he replied. They drove together that morning, the tension of the city melting just a little behind the car windows. Laughter returned to Nora's face after weeks of steel. Later that week, after another long day on set, they found themselves sharing coffee at a small street cafe. Nora asked, So, why journalism? Derek smiled. Because truth is the only crime left that still feels noble. She looked at him, impressed. You sound like you already know our city's darkest secrets. He stirred his cup. Maybe I just recognize the shadows when I see them. Across town, in a different world, Darius Hale sat inside a dim warehouse office. The hum of cargo trucks droned beyond the open doors. Beside him stood King Leon, a towering man with silver rings and a voice like gravel. Leon tossed a folder on the desk. Shipment leaves in 2 days. Your signature keeps it invisible. Darius leaned back in his chair. You could have sent it through your own network. Leon laughed. And trust those idiots? No. Only you change faces faster than currency. That's why your name buys silence. Axel set a metal briefcase on the table, eyes scanning the door. Everything clean. Documents ready. Rick smirked. And here I thought we stopped running errands for smugglers. Not smugglers, Darius corrected quietly. Architects of survival. He signed the papers, his voice soft. If this city burns, let the ashes pay our bills. Leon nodded, satisfied. Always the poet, Harley. Just remember, ashes blow both ways. Outside, the men split into shadows once more. No one in Los Angeles knew their faces. No camera had ever captured their eyes. They changed voices like coats, appearances like seasons. Darius could walk past the police chief himself and remain nothing more than a rumor. In the dim light of the warehouse office, papers lay scattered across the table. Darius leaned back on his chair, a faint, rare smile flickering across his face as he scrolled through the latest shipment report. The door opened. Axel and Serena slipped in, still laughing about something. Axel said, What's with that grin, boss? Counting zeros again. Darius smirked. Just the quiet before you two start making noise. They chuckled and walked farther in, tossing quick jokes back and forth. Serena added, If you'd laugh more often, Maybe the city would stop calling you a ghost. Ghosts don't laugh, he replied without looking up. They just listen. From the back desk, Rick sat motionless, staring at nothing, a tiny smile fixed on his face. Serena called, "Rick, you alive?" No answer. Axel tried again, louder. "Earth to Romeo." Rick still grinned, lost somewhere far from the room. Axel finally snapped his fingers in front of his face. "Hey, lover boy." Rick blinked and sat upright. What? What happened? Darius turned, amused. Someone's brain clearly left the building. Serena folded her arms. "Looks like fate has a wicked sense of humor," he replied. They drove together that morning, the tension of the city melting just a little behind the car windows. Laughter returned to Nora's face after weeks of steel. Later that week, after another long day on set, they found themselves sharing coffee at a small street cafe. Nora asked, "So, why journalism?" Derek smiled. "Because truth is the only crime left that still feels noble." She looked at him, impressed. "You sound like you already know our city's darkest secrets." He stirred his cup. "Maybe I just recognize the shadows when I see them." Across town, in a different world, Darius Hale sat inside a dim warehouse office. The hum of cargo trucks droned beyond the open doors. Beside him stood King Leon, a towering man with silver rings and a voice like gravel. Leon tossed a folder on the desk. "Shipment leaves in 2 days. Your signature keeps it invisible." Darius leaned back in his chair. "You could have sent it through your own network." Leon laughed. "And trust those idiots?" "No. Only you change faces faster than currency. That's why your name buys silence." Axel set a metal briefcase on the table, eyes scanning the door. "Everything clean. Documents ready." Rick smirked. "And here I thought we stopped running errands for smugglers." "Not smugglers," Darius corrected quietly. "Architects of survival." He signed the papers, his voice soft. "If this city burns, let the ashes pay our bills." Leon nodded, satisfied. "Always the poet, Hale. Just remember, ashes blow both ways." Outside, the men split into shadows once more. No one in Los Angeles knew their faces. No camera had ever captured their eyes. They changed voices like coats, appearances like seasons. Darius could walk past the police chief himself and remain nothing more than a rumor. The warehouse office hummed with quiet tension. Piles of shipment files lay open in front of Darius Hale, the glow of a desk lamp cutting across his sharp features. Axel stood near the map wall, discussing new routes with Serena. Faint laughter drifted between their low voices. The door creaked, and Rick came in, dust on his jacket and a light on his face that didn't belong in this room. Axel didn't look up at first. "Got the reports?" Rick nodded, dropped a folder on the table, then stood there, smiling at nothing. "Rick," Axel called once. No answer. "Rick," again louder. Still nothing. The man was 1,000 miles away. Darius's pen stopped. Without raising his head, he said, slow and flat, "Rick." That single word filled the room. Rick blinked, startled, as if waking from a dream. Yeah, boss, I'm here." Darius leaned back, eyes unreadable. "Really? Because what I see is a man, standing in my office while his mind is out kissing sunlight." Rick half smiled, embarrassed. "Just thinking about Haley." Darius didn't ask. He stated it. The name fell like a bullet on steel. "You think I've closed my eyes to what goes on around me?" Silence. "You really think I've gone blind to what my own men dream of?" He rose from his chair, every step measured. "Listen to me, Rick. Whatever world you think you're building with that girl, Don't let it touch mine. You're my brother in this business. Your life is my responsibility. If that obsession makes you sloppy, if it costs me one man, one move, one deal, then I won't just break the chain. I'll break you. And the girl, she won't be harder to find than you think. Rick's face turned pale. Axel and Serena went silent. Darius stopped beside him, voice dropping softer, almost tired. You want a life? Fine. But live it second, not first. In here, work breathes before love. Don't make me see this absent version of you again. He straightened his coat, grabbed the top file from the desk. I've got another meeting. Finish the reports. Try not to daydream on company time. With that he walked out, the door swinging shut behind him. Rick exhaled hard as the door clicked shut behind Darius. Does he ever miss anything? He muttered. Serena smirked. No one hides from him. He doesn't just lead us. He reads us. Axel leaned on the table, lowering her voice. He calls us brothers, but it feels like he carries our pulse in his hand. Rick half smiled, still uneasy. Yeah, and when it stops, he'll be the first to know. Serena whispering across to Axel. Well, Loverboy's halo got snapped. Axel grinned. Next time bring flowers for the boss. Maybe he'll go easy. Rick sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, laugh it off. You two don't understand. Serena smiled. Maybe we don't, but we do know one thing. You just made the ghost talk like a big brother. That's a miracle. He couldn't help but laugh then. Quiet and uneasy, the sound lingering. In the dusty air long after the echo of Darius's footsteps had gone. That night, Axel and Serena sat on a rooftop diner. Wind tugged gently at her hair as the city glowed beneath them. Serena asked, Does it ever feel wrong, hiding what you are? Axel shrugged. Truth only matters to people who can survive it. She smiled softly. Well, that's cynical and strangely honest. He leaned closer, gaze uncertain. Then maybe tonight I'll be honest. Down the street, Rick and Haley walked out of a restaurant, laughter spilling like light into the dark. Haley covered her smile with her hand. I still can't believe you showed up at my office just to check if my job was real. Rick grinned. I don't check jobs. I check happiness. Yours looked fragile. She blinked, a little startled by the gentleness under his words. That's the nicest threat I've ever heard. Not a threat, he said. Just a promise that I notice things. They passed under the cafe window where a TV still replayed the bank footage, sirens, flashing, people screaming, Nora's voice narrating the fear of that day. Rick stopped, watching it flicker against the glass. Axel's voice hummed in his earpiece, distant but sharp. We did the job, but the city hasn't forgotten. Rick whispered to himself. Then we'll make it remember differently. Across the skyline, Nora and Derek drove past the same lights, unaware that the man she was starting to laugh with was one breath away from the same shadows she was chasing. Los Angeles, two worlds, one heartbeat, still learning how to breathe. Now Rick and Haley talked on the phone almost every night, their voices finding each other a little longer each time. Haley. Rick, what do you actually do? Rick. You've asked me this before, Haley. Haley. I asked then too, and you dodged it then too. Rick. I really have to go now. Talk later, all right? Haley. Rick, why can't you just tell me? Rick, later. He ends the call. Later, outside his flat, and half the night had already passed when Axel woke up and saw him outside, pacing alone under the cold sky. Axel. Half the night's gone, ma'am. Why aren't you sleeping? Rick. Just thinking. Axel. Thinking or worrying? Did Haley say something again? Rick. She asked what I do for a living. Axel. Pause. And what did you say? Rick. Nothing. I didn't know what to say. If I tell her the truth, she see me the way everyone else does. Axel. She still doesn't know anything about you. Rick. No. She's the first good thing that's happened to me in years. I don't want to ruin it. I'll tell her I work with my brothers, that we handle deliveries. Simple as that. Axel. Think it through, Rick. Just don't let this turn into more trouble. But if it does, I'm with you every step. Rick. Thanks, Axel. Now sleep, Roman boy. No more thinking tonight. Get some rest. Rick. Yeah. Maybe sleep knows what to do better than I do. When Nora reached home that evening, the house felt wrong the moment she stepped inside. Her key turned almost too easily in the lock, and the quiet that followed made her skin crawl. Mom, she called softly. The only reply was the faint creak of a door deeper inside. She pushed it open and froze. A lamp was overturned, books scattered across the floor, and one curtain fluttered like someone had just brushed past it. Then, from the hallway, a quick shadow darted toward the back door, followed by the thud of running feet. Nora's heart kicked against her ribs. She backed up a step, breath shaking. Mom. No answer. At that moment, the front gate slammed. Derek appeared from the street, calling out, Nora? What happened? She turned to him, Hale, trembling. Someone was here. The house, everything's thrown around. And Mum, I don't know where she is. He came inside fast but careful, eyes scanning every corner, voice low and firm. Stay here. Don't move until I tell you. Before she could protest, he was already crossing the hall, following the noise of retreating footsteps outside. Nora braced herself against the table. Her hands were shaking, and the silence after the chaos felt heavier than any noise. From the bedroom came a soft groan. She ran inside. Her mother lay on the floor, dazed, bruised, but breathing. Mum, hey, I'm here, Nora whispered, trying to steady her own pulse. Just a fall, Margaret murmured, forcing a smile through a grimace. But the fear in the older woman's eyes told a different story. Derek stepped in from the yard, coat creased with dust, eyes sweeping the room like a camera lens picking targets. I checked the street. They're gone, whoever they were. Nora looked up, voice unsteady. They came for us. Why? He didn't answer right away. He walked to the doorframe, examined the bent lock, and pulled a small folded paper from between the splintered wood. Because they left this. Nora took the note. Black marker. Letters scratched in anger. Stay out of our way, reporter. Next time we don't knock. Her stomach tightened. They want me to stop talking. They want you to believe you're alone, Derek said softly. And am I? She asked. He hesitated, then met her eyes. Not while I'm breathing. Before she could reply, the sound of a siren cut through the neighborhood. Blue light washed across the porch as a cruiser pulled in. 2 uniforms rushed inside, and behind them walked a plain-clothes officer, broad shoulders, dark hair streaked with silver, quiet authority in his eyes. He showed his badge. Inspector Adrian Voss, LAPD Special Crimes. He took in the wrecked room, the trembling reds in Nora's hands, the note clutched like a weapon. Rough night, he said, a half smile meant to steady the air. More like a message, Nora answered, voice hard now. They didn't take anything. They just wanted me to shut up. Any idea who they are? Adrian asked. She was quiet for a moment, then spoke with that determined calm that always preceded one of her broadcasts. Yes, and I'm done pretending his name doesn't exist. Darius Hale. The room seemed to pause on that name. Adrian's brows lifted slightly. He'd read the reports, heard the stories, but he hadn't expected to hear the fearless reporter say it so plain. He nodded. All right. Then let's see what this city looks like without his shadow on it. Nora folded the note carefully, slipped it into her coat pocket. I'm not quitting, Inspector. He might own the streets, but he does not own the truth. Adrian looked around uniforms taking photos. Margaret wrapped in a blanket on the sofa. Derek standing near the window like a silent sentinel. Good, he said, meeting Nora's eyes. Because truth could use a little backup. Adrian, half turning at the door. Miss Reed, we'll dig into Hale's trail, but do me a favor. Keep your distance and take care of yourself. Nora, smiling thinly. I'm a journalist, Inspector. Care comes last. Thanks for showing up, most don't. Adrian, sharply but kind. Make it fast for a change. We need you in one piece. He nods to Derek and steps out. Derek, quietly, watching the door close. He's right this time. Nora? You too? I don't need a second bodyguard. Derek, soft grin. Then think of me as a habit you can't quit. For a beat, their eyes lock. An unspoken question hanging between fear and whatever was slowly growing beyond it. Her mother Margaret say, news will still be there tomorrow, Nora. But if you burn yourself chasing it, who will bring it to light? Now go and get some rest. The office screens buzzed with static maps and broken feeds. Outside, construction cranes moaned against the wind, metal howling like restless ghosts around glass towers. Axel leaned over the console, a half-drained cup of coffee cooling beside him. 3 more dummy accounts down, he said. Each one leads to a different server in Warsaw, Rome, or maybe hell itself. Rick tightened his jaw. We've chased ghosts before. This one isn't a ghost, Axel replied. His name pops up in old Interpol records, Marcus Keller. Digital extortionist. He sells fear like street vendors sell cigarettes. Uses people's own faces as currency. Rick tossed a file on the table, pages fluttering. 22 victims that we know of. Maybe more. Girls from cheap hotels, students from abroad. Half of them too scared to report. 2 already jumped from bridges before sunrise. Axel lowered his voice. He feeds off shame. The door swung open and Darius walked in. The air shifted. Even the screens seemed to brighten for him. No one spoke as he glanced at the maps. Reports, he said. Rick handed over the folder. European connections. Eastern routes. He's not just blackmailing civilians. Some are connected to bureau officials. That keeps him untouchable. Darius flipped through the pages. His voice never rose, but the words cut like ice. Untouchable is a temporary condition. Everyone bleeds the same when you close the distance. He paused at a photo. Blurred security still showing Marcus at an ATM, half smiling at a reflection behind the camera. Find that reflection, Darius said. Every photo leaves a ghost. We'll follow his. Boss, Axel said. What if he's outside our reach? The man moves countries like cards. Darius. Then we shuffle the deck until he's on top. Lightning snapped across the windows, throwing their faces into brief frames of white. Rick rubbed his knuckles. You really want him alive? Darius looked at him sharply. I want him seen. Alive long enough for the world to watch his silence burn. Axel clicked through feeds. A new signal flaring red on the map. Trace from Berlin subnet. Encrypted upload active now. Patch it. Rick snapped. Static filled the warehouse. Then for a second, Marcus Keller's face caught in the blur. A thin, smiling ghost with wires behind him. Darius. Smile while you can, Marcus. Monsters don't keep their masks forever. The transmission died. Silence. Rick looked over. Orders? Darius answered without blinking. Lock every border. He came through one of our roads. He will run back through it. And when he does, we will be waiting. Wind hammered the warehouse doors as the lights dimmed. Axel muttered, 2 days, maybe 3. He'll slip again. Darius looked toward the city through the rain-streaked glass. Then let the storm keep him awake. Guilt has a sound, and I want him to hear it. Thunder answered for him, rolling through the steel rafters until even the monitors seemed to shiver. The evening lay over Los Angeles, like a tired heartbeat. Rick waited by the pier, where Haley had said she'd meet him after shooting an interview for her new media internship. She appeared a few minutes later in a pale blue coat, hair pulled back in a ribbon, a camera bag swinging from her shoulder. The sun hit her face, and for a moment Rick forgot every lie he'd practiced to keep her safe. Haley, you kept me waiting. Rick, smiling. Had to let the view get ready for you. She shook her head, hiding a smile. She said, you always seem to be somewhere else, even when you're here. Are you running from something? He watched the waves curl and die at their feet. Running from time, mostly. Haley. And does time chase you or just watch you from a distance? Rick. Both. It has a good aim. Haley. You never tell me exactly what you do. Rick. What kind of work keeps you up all night? Rick. Half smile. I work with my brothers. Their office, their rules. Family business. Haley. Family business sounds so serious when you say it. What is it, some secret project? Rick. Let's just say we keep everything running when the city falls asleep. Haley. Mysterious. Do you ever switch off? Rick. Only when I'm here. Haley. Here as in this cafe. Rick. Softly. Here as in with you. Her heartbeat tripped. She looked down, tracing the edge of her cup, trying to hide the blush that betrayed her. Haley. You talk like you've practiced flirting in 10 different cities. Rick. Or maybe I finally found the one city worth learning in. Haley. That's not fair. Rick. What isn't? Haley. The way you make everything sound like a promise. Rick. Maybe because I've lived too long on broken ones. She leaned closer across the table, eyes searching his. Haley. Then let me guess, you're the one who fixes everything, right? Rick. Only until someone fixes me. Haley's smile softened. Haley. Maybe you just need something. Or someone. That doesn't need fixing. Rick. Quietly. Maybe I already met her. She laughed under her breath, eyes shining. Haley. Then don't disappear tomorrow. Rick. I'll try no promises. Haley. I'll take the try. He opened his mouth to reply, but the distant buzz of a phone alert from his coat pocket cut through. The moment Axel's message. Trace active. Berlin. Love doesn't knock, it breaks in, Rick said with a crooked grin, half joking as he watched the city lights bleed against the office windows. Axel chuckled from the corner, tracing lines over the glowing map. Careful, Romeo, he said. You start sounding like that and Darius might send you on unpaid therapy. But Rick wasn't listening. His phone buzzed, a message lighting up the screen. Report collected. His pulse quickened. Minutes later, a man entered the office, crisp files in hand. Sir, all background details you requested. Haley Brooks. Rick took the folder, his heartbeat stumbling as the man continued. No family. Orphan. Grew up through foster homes. Currently interning at Ella Media Group. No criminal record. Rick smiled faintly. An orphan, he murmured, almost tenderly. Guess we both learned the hard way how to live without safety nets. Axel leaned forward, sensing that hint of warmth. Ma'am, you look like somebody wrote a love poem on your face. Don't tell me you've already bought the wedding rings. Rick, laughing. Relax, bro. I only bought the courage to say her name without choking. They barely had time to breathe before the main door opened. Darius stepped in, controlled stride, eyes measured, presence quiet but heavy. Tell her what? Rick turned, trying to play it light. Bro, you always have perfect timing. Darius set his gloves on the desk, then slid another folder across. If this is about Haley Brooks, you might want to read my version before you write yours. Rick opened it. Photographs, notes, an old picture of Haley with another man. The grin drained from his face. She had someone once, Darius said softly, not cruelly. Still tied to him, at least on paper. When your car hit her that day, I already knew who she was. I had her background before you even asked. Rick blinked, disbelief edging into his voice. Why? You spy on everyone I talk to. Darius leaned closer, firm but protective. On everyone who could put my brother in trouble. You think I'd let any unknown woman walk into our world without knowing where she came from? Axel shifted awkwardly. The tension filled the air like static before a storm. So, the file mentions she had a boyfriend once. That true, bro? Darius, slight smile. Everyone has a past, Axel. What matters is whether it still breathes. Hers stopped the day she walked away from him. Rick lowered the file. She's not a threat, he said quietly. She's the only thing that feels real. Darius studied him for a moment, then placed a hand on his shoulder. Then keep it real and safe. But remember, love can't erase the past. It only uncovers it. Rick exhaled, staring down at Haley's name, feeling both warned and protected. Axel finally spoke, half smiling. Well, bro, looks like even Cupid needs clearance in this business. Darius almost laughed. Maybe. But if love's the risk you're taking, make sure it's worth the report. And what about the reporter girl? Nora Reed. She's still digging. Axel. The same one. She's been seen with that European kid, Derek. Still biting at your name, boss. Even turned the break-in at her place into another story against you. Worse. She spun that break-in at her house into another broadcast. Said you're the devil running this city. Darius, smirking. If she needs a devil to make her story shine, I'll give her the finest horns in Los Angeles. Axel, grinning. She's not backing off. Word is, she's got Derek sniffing around for proof. Darius, then let them dig. Graves look the same whether they're for truth or for fools. Brief pause. He turns the conversation cold again. Darius. Now Marcus. What's the latest? Axel. He's close. 2 days out, moving quiet. Our trace shows he's slipping through the side routes toward the docks. Darius. Let him. A rat can hide only until it smells its own fear. Leans forward, voice low and final. When he surfaces, Axel. I don't want a capture. I want an ending. Morning sunlight spilled over Ventura Boulevard as Nora Reed stepped out of the broadcast van. Her mic already live. The street was wide awake, vendors setting up fruit stalls, buses breathing diesel into the warm air, children dragging school bags like sleepy trophies. She smiled straight at the lens. This is Nora Reed. National Network News, bringing voices from the street. The people who live under the name Everyone Still. Whispers. Darius Hale. She turned toward an older shopkeeper arranging papers in his kiosk. Sir, people still talk about the bank robbery last week. Do you think anyone will dare stop Darius Hale? The man's hands froze on the newspaper stack. Stop him? He gave a dry laugh. Miss, I pay rent to men who pay rent to him. You want to stop the wind too? Nora pressed gently. You mean he controls your business? He looked up from behind the lottery counter. Not my business, my piece. If you don't pay, you disappear faster than a headline. She thanked him, turned toward a young student leaning against his bike, earbuds hanging loose. Do you believe this city can change? He shrugged. Maybe when your network stops pretending it doesn't get paid to look away. But if someone really fights, I'll watch. Maybe even help. He half smiled, embarrassed by his own courage, and pedaled off before she could ask more. Nora moved further down the street, stopping a woman carrying groceries and a stroller. Ma'am, you remember the Federal Bank incident? Were you there? The woman's eyes darkened. Close enough. My sister worked 2 blocks away. She adjusted a crying toddler and added quietly, it wasn't about money. It was about fear. Ever since, people walk faster, talk less. You breathe that man's name wrong and trouble hears you. Nora nodded, the camera catching the tremor in her fingertips as she lifted the mic back to herself. So the city keeps moving, but the fear stays. The producer's voice whispered in her earpiece. Perfect. Keep rolling. She inhaled. If power owns every corner, then honesty has to start on a sidewalk like this one. A gust of wind lifted her hair across her face as she looked straight into the camera. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes it's just a woman with a microphone who refuses to shut up. Across town, in a muted bar, Darius Hale watched the broadcast flicker across a wall screen. The glass in his hand stayed perfectly still. Around him, the chatter died on cue. Axel leaned closer. She's still hitting our name on live feeds. Darius didn't blink. Let her. Every empire needs an echo. Rick glanced sideways. Tension between admiration and unease. You sure letting her talk is smart? Darius set the glass down with quiet precision. I don't silence volume. I control channels. Right now she's good for business fear sounds louder when someone broadcasts it. Axel couldn't resist the smirk. And if she turns that volume on you? Darius looked at the frozen frame on the screen, Nora's determined face framed by sunlight. Then she learned who invented silence. The room hung silent for a second longer before the door buzzed. One of their runners entered, sliding a tablet across the table. Darius skimmed through the feed. Marcus's signal hit the Atlantic harbor side, the man said quickly. Darius's lips curved, a predator's patience hiding behind civility. Finally, the ghost found his shadow. Axel leaned over the data stream glowing on the table. He's sneaking in low profile, no passport, same routine. He thinks blending with the cargo will save him. Nothing saves a man who thinks daylight hides him, Darius replied. Voice even. Track every route. When he surfaces, close every exit. Rick looked from the screen back to him. You want him alive? Darius's eyes never left the monitor. Alive long enough to remember my face. Outside, the sunlight turned harsher, ricocheting through the city's steel and glass. Back on the boulevard, Nora wrapped her mic cable, unaware that across that same skyline, a man in black was already rewriting her tomorrow. The broadcast van door slammed, her colleague Emily calling, You sure you want to air all of that, Nora? Nora smiled, exhausted but fierce. If I don't, then fear wins tonight's headline. She looked once more at the street where voices had trembled and spoken. Anyway, then climbed into the van, waiting for the red light of live to fade, never knowing it had just painted a target across her life. The studio lights hummed against the hush of late evening. Nora Reed checked her mic, fingers trembling only slightly as the red on-air light blinked alive. The screens behind her filled with city footage, Los Angeles breathing in fear under one name that refused to fade. Darius Hale. Her voice cut through the silence, steady, rich with the edge of defiance. Tonight, I speak not for headlines or ratings, but for every home that locks its door out of fear, she said, meeting the camera's gaze head on. A week ago, men broke into my house. They left no money stolen, no valuables taken. Only a note that said, "Stay out of our way." Those men didn't come for my things. They came to quiet my words. The control room froze on her words. Screens showed technicians exchanging uneasy looks. Nora didn't waver. But I'm not built for silence. Mr. Hale, if that warning came from you or any of your loyal ghosts, hear this. I'm not like the rest who hide. Fear doesn't own my breath. The producer lifted a hand as if to stop her. She kept going. I've seen this city kneel to you. I've seen mothers drag their kids home before sunset because your name walks the streets at night. But whatever empire of fear you've built, remember, a voice cuts deeper than a gunshot. And mine won't stop. The broadcast ended on her close-up. Eyes bright, throat tight, exhaustion and courage tangled in one look. The light switched off. For a long breath, no one spoke. Then slow clapping broke the silence. Nora turned. Derek West stood in the doorway, half smiling, applause echoing through the control room. Well, he said, walking toward her, if that doesn't wake up half the city, nothing will. She sighed, pulling off her mic. And the other half will try to put me back to sleep. Derek laughed softly. Let them try. You just turned fear into television. Appreciate the poetry, she said, gathering her notes. But some of us still have work to do. He tilted his head. Correction. Some of us need a break. Come with me to New York, my hometown. We could use the change of air. Nora blinked. You're kidding. I have shows schedules. You can shoot them there. He grinned. New York has roads too, remember? Even reporters need scenery shifts. She tried not to smile. You're impossible. Persistent. He stepped closer. Take 2 or 3 of your team if you like. My brother's joining us. You'll have all the backup you need. 1 weekend away won't end the world. She hesitated, lowering her eyes. It's not just work. My mom, she's alone. I can't leave her by herself. Derek's voice gentled. Then let me talk to her. I promise I'll convince her. Nobody argues with charm this good. That caught a small laugh out of her. The first one in days. She exhaled, the weight of sleepless nights finally softening around her shoulders. You don't take no for an answer, do you? Not when the answer keeps me 1,200 miles away from my favorite journalist. She looked up at him, half amused, half moved. Fine, but strictly work. Sure, he said, grin widening. And if the work happens to involve laughter and skyline dinners, I'll try to survive it. As they left the studio together, the hallway lights dimmed behind them. Outside, Los Angeles still whispered Darius Hale's name like a warning carried by the wind. But for the first time in weeks, Nora's heart didn't echo it. Tomorrow her story would continue, this time from New York. The office echoed with the thud of metal doors and the electric hum of machinery. Rick stood near the center, jaw tight, eyes burning with the kind of fury that didn't need a reason anymore. One of his men, A young runner barely out of training stumbled through with an update, late and nervous. Boss, I took the files to the checkpoint, but they said, before the sentence finished, Rick's hand shot out. A harsh shove slammed the guy against a stack of crates. The next second his fist landed square on the man's collarbone. Paperwork scattered like feathers. You think this is a game? Rick barked, his voice echoing off the metal walls. One delay, one sloppy move, and the whole chain burns down. You want to see what happens when it burns? The man's mouth worked helplessly. I am sorry, Rick. Rick hit him again, anger rolling out in strikes he didn't even count. It wasn't about the files anymore. It wasn't even about the mistake. It was the storm inside him, that pounding reminder of a woman with soft eyes and someone else's name attached to her past. Axel stood a few feet away, arms folded, a single brow raised, watching, thinking, waiting for the flame to settle. Enough, he said finally, voice cutting through the noise like steel against glass. The runner stumbled out quickly, half dragging the scattered pages with him, thankful to escape breathing. Rick wiped his knuckles with the back of his hand, muttering, Guy deserved it. Axel tilted his head. Maybe. Or maybe he just walked into the hurricane you're carrying around. He gave a half grin. You're wound up again. I can feel it from here. So what's eating you this time? Don't tell me it's still our mystery girl. Rick shot him a look. Mind your business, Axel chuckled. Your business is my business, technically. You, me, same operation, same ghosts. So, if you're pacing night and day because of Haley's old boyfriend, he paused deliberately, smirking. We could solve that problem with a lot less drama. Rick frowned. What the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about efficiency, Axel said, stepping closer. We find the guy. We have a little conversation. He learns geography, specifically, how far below ground it is from here to Regret. You relax, the world spins easier. Rick stared at him, half shocked, half fighting a reluctant smile. You're insane, and you're lovesick. Axel shot back. At least one of us should enjoy the situation. He walked toward the coffee table, grabbing a half-empty cup. Look, man, be logical. We've pulled off heists in 3 continents, tricked half the Interpol network, and you're worried about one ex-boyfriend. Come on. If the guy's alive, he's lucky. If he shows up near your precious Haley again, I'll personally make him less lucky. Rick exhaled through clenched teeth. You think it's that simple? It always is, Axel said with a shrug. People make love complicated. Work makes it cleaner. A scared guy never shows up twice. He tossed the coffee cup in the bin, dusting his hands. Now relax. If Darius sees you this jumpy, he'll write you off as unreliable. And then all your sweet little daydreams about becoming Mr. Romantic end before the first dance music starts. Rick rubbed the bridge of his nose, half laughing despite himself. You've got issues, Axel. Yeah, Axel said proudly. Functional ones. Before Rick could reply, his phone buzzed. A quick alert from Serena. Axel peeked over. She's still stuck at the mall. Figures. You'd think an entire arms deal could be signed before she finishes shopping for boots. Rick barked a tired laugh, shaking his head. You're unbelievable. Compliments accepted, Axel said, slapping Rick's shoulder. Come on, lover boy. Forget the boyfriend, forget the tantrum. We still have one ghost to catch. Marcus, Rick said grimly. Axel nodded, grin fading into that sharp focus he got before a job. Exactly. First we finish Marcus. clean and loud. After that, his smirk returned, mischievous and dangerous all at once. We'll deal with Haley's little history lesson, one heartbreak at a time. Rick just stared at him. You never stop joking, do you? Axel turned toward the door, tossing a wink over his shoulder. Only about love. Everything else I take dead serious. He pushed the metal door open. Sunlight sliced into the room, painting both of them in hard gold. Let's move, Axel ordered lightly. We wrap Marcus, then we'll see who else needs a fair warning. Rick followed, still tense but almost smiling now. As if somewhere between Axel's madness and loyalty, he'd found a moment's breath again.